Mukase, good morning. Good morning. It's breakfast time. I'm going to make one of those simple breakfasts that I almost feel embarrassed showing because it's just so basic. But again, I feel like it's something that a lot of people don't know. So I'm going to point you to it. It's this simple breakfast dish we call rice water in Ghana. Rice water. Rice water, right? Rice water. Right, but other people call it rice pudding. The brothalized version of that is rice pudding. But hey, is it something that exists anywhere? Why do people call it rice pudding? We made the dish and we choose to call it rice water. Call it rice water. No. Alright, rice water or rice pudding, whichever way. We're going to make it with a little bit of jazz on it. Alright, so here it is. What you need for rice water is rice and water. Maybe that's why it's called rice water, because that's all you need for it, rice and water to cook it. But of course you need to sweeten it because it's a breakfast dish, right? So you also need some sugar, and for us, as always, we will be using an Ital form of sweetening. Today we'll be using brown sugar, brown cane sugar. Okay, it's a very cheap, inexpensive and effective way of sweetening breakfast. So cane sugar will be our sweetener today. And then we'll also be using my creamer of choice. Almond milk. So essentially, apart from rice and water, which is rice water, what you need is sugar and milk, right? That's how our mothers always used to make it. They used to use the ideal milk and the carnation milk and the evaporated milk and all of that. But remember, this is Ital Mukase. We're not using any of those milks, we're using oat milk, sugar, right? And then for the jazz, we'll put a little spin on it. Little dash of cinnamon. But that's something you may want to leave out if you're not a cinnamon buff, right? But if you just want to put a little bit of spin on it, give it a little bit of, jazz, like I said, some cinnamon, some nutmeg. Always goes great with any type of breakfast that I know. Like porridge type of breakfast is what I'm talking about. Alright? So let's get right to it. Let's get set and get our rice water going. First thing, set some water on the stove. Get some water boiling on the stove. And then we wash our rice, put it in there, make it boil, and then the rest is pretty a straightforward course. So follow me. So first thing, turn on our stove. And remember, we'll be boiling rice, right? Rice takes a while to boil, so I set my stove on high to make sure that the water boils quickly. While the water is boiling, what I'll be doing is I'll be washing my rice. So this is the ratio. You take about 1 cup of rice to 3 cups of water for a start. 1 cup of rice to 3 cups of water. And I'll explain that in a sec. So here it is. It's 1 cup of rice to 3 cups of water. Okay? And here's why. Because traditionally, the trick to making good rice is to take 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. Now, because this is not fluffy rice, we're gonna increase the amount of water, and we'll even go a little more when it gets to the point, okay? But for this point, start boiling the rice with 1 part rice, 3 parts water, okay? Let's wash the rice. I always wash my rice. I've seen people boil rice like straight from the bag into this. I don't know about that. I don't know about that at all. I always wash my rice. And I wash it about 3 times too, not just once. All this while we're just waiting for our water to boil so we can go in, We're just waiting for our water to boil at this point. And once the water boils, oh, I forgot one small ingredient. is optional. And I forgot this because I really don't use it in my cooking. But I'm going to tell you about it anyway, just in case you want to use it, because people do use it. Pinch of salt. A pinch of salt. If you're a salt person, feel free to drop a pinch of salt in the water at this point as it's boiling. But I don't use salt to cook. I really don't use salt that much, right? I use salt in other ways. I don't use too much salt in my cooking, so that's why I almost forgot about it. But anyways, the water is still boiling, and we're waiting for our rice. The rice is all washed and ready to go. Okay. Let's take a break right now, because all we're doing right now is just waiting for the water to boil. Let's go check out the Pan-African Heritage World video, right? And maybe even some music, hey, and then we'll come right back, all right? By the time we come back, we'll be ready to continue.
Hot a fire burn them. Red lava done them. Diarrhea run them. The wrath of God upon them.
I am your thief, you sell some fire. You're killing people every day. Anytime you open your mouth, I feel like you're leading my people astray.
Government by family and friend, corruption never end. And you tell us said you are God sent, but when we turn around the bend, you thieving with a pen. Coffee with family, and I struggle for fed.
Au revoir. Hey! Mbaskayo! Sikana way. Nakudi.
The Pan-African Heritage World Museum coming up in Ghana will launch its virtual digital version on its website in January 2022. It's the first museum of its kind to house the history, arts and culture of the Pan-African world. Be one of the first to register to be a member and enjoy all the discounts and privileges that go with it. Visit www.pahw.org and register.
At this point, all we're gonna do is to cover it and let it cook. Remember, it's a grain. Rice, it's a hard grain. So give it time to cook, okay? Let that thing cook. And that's why you give it a lot of water so it can really cook and get soft. Alright? 1 part rice, 3 parts water. Got it right this time. Alright, let it cook. Now while that rice is cooking, let me give you some tips about rice water. Tip number 1. You want to keep stirring it as it's cooking, you know, unlike ordinary rice. You don't want it to cook like rice before you pay attention to it, alright? Otherwise it's gonna stick to the, you know how rice gets the crusty bottom and all that. You want to avoid that. So while it's cooking, you want to occasionally check on it and use your whisk or whatever utensil you're using to go through it to make sure that it's not sticking to the bottom of it as it's cooking. Alright? Tip number 2, if you can, use a non-stick cooking pot so you avoid what I just described. It helps. Okay? Let's go check our rice. Like I said, you don't want to wait till it's too late and it's getting the crusty bottom before you check it. This is Mama's trick for making this meal. You don't wait for it to cook all the way down like rice before you pay attention to it. And this is why you give it more water than you would if you're cooking regular rice, right? So you can keep checking it, stirring it as it cooks. And like I said, if you can, use a non-stick pot because that also helps, right? Because with rice water, the last thing you want is the rice sticking to the bottom of the pot. You don't want that. And let it cook. Let it cook for at least a good at this point it's only beginning to cook, right? So you're not even bothering too much. Just cover it again and let it cook. The other thing I observed my mom do a lot of the times whilst making this dish is that when it started boiling up to this point, she would take the lid off, right? So that it's boiling and simmering, but it's not too intense, right? So the heat is just kind of like softening the rice, but you're not cooking it the way you would cook like rice, right? So when you have that, it's almost like you're making like some type of rice broil, if you will, because all you're doing really is just stirring, make sure it's not sticking, and make sure it's cooking, right? It's soft. I'm not shy to occasionally take a little bit, check it with my fingers to see its progress. Maybe even bite on it a little bit. Just to see how it's processing, you know? Like I said, let it cook. Basically, that's what you keep doing for the next how many ever minutes, right? Let it cook, stir, let it cook, stir, let it cook, cover, stir, let it cook, come back, check, cover, stir, like that. So someone was asking how long you have to cook this for. Great question. The only thing is, it could also depend on the type of rice you're using, right? So that's why I'm a bit about telling you how much exactly you should cook your rice, because if this thing doesn't cook properly, you will not enjoy it. So I'll say cook it till it's cooked. Make sure the rice is cooked. And here it is. If the water starts drying out of the thing, of the rice, and it's not fully cooked, you still feel like it's a bit too tough for you, don't feel shy about adding a little bit of water, okay? Throw in a little bit of water so it cooks down, alright? I think I got my ratio right though, so I don't need to throw in extra water, but I'm just giving you that point, alright? At this point, it's just fury in here. It's boiling, giddy, 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 giddy. So I turn this down a bit, you know? And still keep whisking it around, stirring. And it looks like we're getting there. The rice is beginning to break down. Now you don't see grains anymore. You see like some type of a pudding forming, and that's when you know you're almost there. I'm gonna bring my spoon and check this again to see how the texture is like. It definitely is cooked. It definitely is cooked. It is cooked. So at this point, all you're craving for, at this point, all you're checking for is texture, you know. And remember, I need to say this before we get there. I was trying to save this point for later, but the point is, I cream my breakfast with almond milk, which is quite liquidy, right? So I prefer to make my puddings thick so that when it breaks it down, it doesn't become too watery. So I'm going to leave it sitting on the stove. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the stove off as usual and let the rest of the heat do its work. Maybe even cover it, and I'll be back with the other stuff that'll make it smell and taste nice, right? Cinnamon and all that stuff. All right, right back. At this point, for all intents and purposes, this is cooked, right? What we're gonna do at this point is throw in the cinnamon. And let me tell you something about the cinnamon. Sometimes people want you to reserve it so they kind of like dash it themselves after you serve it. So you may want to do that. But I sometimes would also just throw it in the pot right from the beginning. Not too much, just a little bit. Same thing with my nutmeg. A little bit. Mix it in. At this point it's really cooked. I'm gonna bring it over here so we can see the rest of it, right? This is basically it. Breakfast is served. It looks delicious, smells delicious, and I'm about to tell you how it tastes. I'm gonna add a little bit of cinnamon on top of this. A spoon. And I'm gonna tell you how this tastes. We give thanks. Sound the alarm. Thank you for watching Ital Mukase. This is delicious. Make it for your family. You know? And I'll tell you something too. You know the oatmeal creamer? Use that if you like it. Because it gives it a different flavor too, right? It's like using a more condensed form of the oat milk for it. That's great too. That's another tip. Until next week, Ital Mukase, respect. We'll see you. Thank you for watching.